Hello everyone, I'm Andrew with PokePhenomenal, and would you look at that, I'm back with another challenge video. Now, up to this point, we've mostly focused on Fire Red and Leaf Green monotype challenges, but today I wanted to take a bit of a different approach and try a challenge with some much more, let's call them silly, restrictions. Today, I'm going to attempt a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Black 2 using only Chompy Bois. That is to say, the only Pokemon I'm going to let join my team this time through are absolute terrors and gnashers and just little goblins with a bite force of 1000 psi or more. But jokes aside, let's break down what that actually means. The idea for this run started with the release of Gen 9 and the appearance of a little guy I think we all know and love, Fuecoco. Fuecoco is just an absolute unit of a design, and one that got me thinking. I love crocodiles and alligators and hippos and sharks. Basically, any animal that could bite through my leg like a sugar wafer is making the top 10. In scientific terms, these are what we would call Chompy Bois. So I wondered, could I create and finish a Nuzlocke challenge that only uses Pokemon that I would classify as Chompy Bois? Although at first I considered attempting this in Scarlet and Violet, I pretty quickly abandoned that idea. As much as I love Fuecoco, working through a Nuzlocke of those games is not exactly on my list of things to do right now. But then, I took a look at the Unova Pokédex from Black and White 2, and I knew that it could be done. I mean, let's be real. This is the generation that introduced the Sandile line. Of course, it's the perfect testing ground for a runabout Chompy Bois. So, there's the justification anyway. But I'm sure you're wondering about the rules, so let's cover those right now. While I could have just gone off of vibe and said, any Pokemon I decide is a Chompy Bois is legal for this run, I decided to try and work out some actual rules for the challenge, and these are what I decided on. The run will be attempted in Pokemon Black 2 and played on challenge mode. Normal hardcore Nuzlocke rules apply, outside of catching rules which I'll be modifying slightly. Rather than standard catching rules, the only Pokemon that can be caught and used in the run are Chompy Bois. Specifically, Pokemon whose sprite or official art have visible teeth, and which can learn a biting move such as Bite, Crunch, Fire Fang, and moves of that nature. Only one Pokemon that fits this description may be caught and used per area. And finally, our starter Pokemon will be modified in order to keep up with this theme. And that's it. The Chompy Bois Challenge Run. I know how arbitrary and pointless this must seem to all of you, but let's be real. I'm a Pokemon challenge runner on YouTube, and this is exactly the level of idiotic that gets me excited. So without further ado, let's dig in. We start the run by picking our avatar and naming him Chomp, while giving our rival the moniker Gnaw. Instead of the usual array of starters, I've decided to replace Oshawott with one of the OGs in the Chompy Bois community, Totodile. We gladly accept our starter, and realize that our first Chompy Bois is actually a girl, who we name Munch. But that's okay, this club is not that exclusive, and girls can be Chompy Bois too. Once we finished up our first rival fight against Gnaw, we head up to Route 19, where after watching the catching tutorial, we add the first new member to our team, a Patrat named Bit. After stocking up on potions for the journey ahead, we run through Route 19, Flakesi Town, and Route 20, before facing off against Gnaw once again at the ranch. Thankfully, Patrat is about as strong in the early game as all of its past generation counterparts, and Bit handles the fight without any issues. Rescuing the Herdier from the Team Plasma Grunt, we bully some kids in Alder's trainer school, after which we're all set to go on challenging the Aspertia gym. Charon's trainers prove to be no issue, and after beating them, we equip our Pokemon with some Oran Berries and run in. But before showing the gym battle, I think it's important to dip into the strategy corner to discuss our plan for this fight. Compared to other games, the first gym in Black 2 can be troublesome to beat, and so I employ a classic strategy in order to tackle it. Cheating. Yeah, so I actually forgot to enable challenge mode for this fight, and didn't realize it until the deed was already done. So the run was kind of delegitimized right from the get-go. Sorry about that. But given I was too lazy to redo the fight, I hope you'll forgive me the transgression. Rest assured, the remainder of the fights will be done with challenge mode enabled. But anyway, back to the fraudulent gym battle. Charon starts with his Patrat, and we send out Bit to counter it, forgetting that his partner has Keen Eye and starting with a sand attack. See, I don't even need challenge mode to make this game difficult. We then decide to Bite instead, which does decent damage, and although his Patrat continues to bulk itself up with workup, We manage to get a lucky crit and take it out. He then brings out the Lillipup, and we go for Sand Attack again since this Pokemon can't avoid it. Charon starts chaining workups on Lillipup while we chip away with Bite. But before we're able to take it out, Charon burns his potion to give his dog more time to beef up. Luckily for us, our Sand Attack pays off, and we avoid taking any early tackles. This fact turns out to be essential, as when the Lillipup survives Bite with 1 HP and finally lands a hit, it's nearly enough to kill Bit. Thankfully though, Bit manages to hang on just long enough to take the Lillipup out. With the battle against Charon, which was a little tougher than I initially expected, over, and the basic badge secured, we back out to the main menu and switch challenge mode on. From here, things are going to be real. Heading out of the gym, Bianca gives us a return, which seems crazy early to a Gen 3 stan like myself, but spoiler warning, in this run, we're going to take a page out of every RPG player's book and not even end up using it for fear of needing it later. Thanks a lot, Dragon Quest. Moving to the right from Flakesi, we make it to Verbank City, where we're immediately embroiled in some family drama, which we quickly excuse ourselves from in order to head down to the Verbank complex. Here, we add Chewbecca the Growlithe to our team, who's going to be one of the more powerful chompers among our ranks. After that encounter, however, there's nothing else for us to do but face Roxy, so we prepare to take on the next gym. Munch evolves into Croconaw, and we face off against the gym trainers where, if you look real close, you can see the moment where my Gen 3 brain turns on, making me burn a potion because I forgot that overworld poison damage is gone by Gen 5. But other than that, things go smoothly, and we start the fight with the gym leader. Roxy leads with Coughing, and we start with Bit, going for a Hypnosis. Coughing outspeeds us and deals a good amount of damage with Venoshock, after which our Hypnosis misses. A second Venoshock gets us dangerously close to death, but Bit holds on, and finally lands his Hypnosis. Deciding to risk the wake up from Coughing, we try out Crunch, and although it does minimal damage, I go for one more anyway, which is enough to get Coughing low enough that it burns its own Oranberry. We risk Crunch again, lucking out and getting another turn of sleep before taking it down to the yellow. But our luck runs out when the Coughing wakes up and tackles Bit to death. We use the chance to switch over to Munch, but Water Gun isn't enough to take it out, and Roxy has the chance to heal up.
I'm sorry, Bit.
After 2 more Water Guns, we tank an Assurance, and once more Water Gun falls just short of KOing, with the Coughing's next Venoshock bringing us down to yellow before we can take it out. Grimer comes in next, and with the trauma of Water Gun not working against Coughing, we go for Bite instead. Venoshock brings us to 5 HP, and we decide to switch over to Chewbecca. Grimer gets a crit on its next Venoshock, but our Flame Wheel is also able to do good damage, and after healing poison with our Pecha Berry, we take the Grimer out. Her anchor Whirlipede finally makes its appearance, and I go for Flame Wheel, my Gen 3 brain once again kicking in, and forgetting that fire moves can be physical. We're lucky enough to get the burn, but Venoshock brings Chewbecca's health dangerously low, with the Whirlipede Citrus Berry taking it out of a guaranteed 2-hit KO range. Unfortunately, it's looking like we're going to have to sack Chewbecca, and then I choose Flame Wheel again for her final attack. Although I'm already on my way to the coffin shop to pick one out for Chewbecca, the legend survives with 1 HP, giving us just enough leeway to take Whirlipede out and earn the Toxic Badge. That fight was, in all honesty, way too close, but we make it through. It's sad to say goodbye to Bit, but after doing so, we head back over to Route 20 to catch our replacement, who we name Tear. With the Verbank gym now completed, we're finally up to the part of a Black and White 2 run that everyone dreads, starring in a movie that only pays an exposure. This is always one of the more annoying parts of this game, and it gets made even worse when my game crashes right at the end and I have to do it all again. Who greenlit this? So we reload and finish phoning in our guest appearance, before heading to the south of town to confront some Plasma Grunts and grab Cut from Roxy. In order to use the HM without having to consign Tear to carrying it for half of the run, I decide to bend the rules a bit and add Paper the Sawaddle to the team, who's going to be a sort of mascot for this part of the run. And don't give me grief for this in the comments, okay? Those little teeth are just made for chomping leaves. Next, after fighting another Plasma Grunt and then resolving some family drama, we take our therapy payment in the form of a boat ride over to Castelia City, which we bum off of Roxy's dad. There's a lot to do in this city and a lot of items to find, but the most important things we pick up are the Attract TM, the Amulet Coin, a Charcoal and Mystic Water, the Scope Lens and Guard Spec, and finally a Quick Claw. Once those errands are done, it's time for us to venture into the sewers with Nah. Early on, we catch a Zubat for the team who we name Nibble, and after taking some Plasma Grunts on, Nog gives us the Strength 8 gem, which will be great for Tear. This is also where we first meet Berg, and good timing too, as it's just about time for us to take him on. With that in mind, we evolve Tear and Nibble, who in their new forms become much more threatening at this early point of the game, and then clear out Berg's gym of its trainers before starting the fight. Out of fear for what his Dwebble could do to Chewbecca or Nibble, we decide to start the fight with Munch. Water Gun does the perfect amount of damage to get us a 2-hit KO, and Berg brings out his Levani next. We switch over to Nibble and tank a Razor Leaf before defeating Levani with our 4x damage wing attack. Berg tosses out his Carablast, which also goes down in 1, after which he seals his fate, deciding to have his Shelmet use Curse, and falling as a result. With the Insect Badge securely in our possession, we immediately move on to the next fight that awaits us, this time versus Colress. This fight is often very scary, given the power Steel types have in the early game, but Chewbecca's Fire typing makes relatively quick work of him and his team, and we make it through unscathed. Heading up to Route 4, we next do something very important. We catch our Sandile, Jawbone, the ultimate Chompy Boy who gives me the confidence that this run will be possible. Quickly checking his stats, we also confirm that he has Moxie, which helps to soothe the pain of his plus special attack nature. Now that we're armed with the true hero of this run, we pick up some items, work our way through Joint Avenue, and reach Nimbasa City. Here, we fight against some train conductors who have no idea what's coming for them in the future, or past, and prepare ourselves for the next gym fight. Because Black and White 2 are special games, we first have to go through a sort of pseudo pre-gym before we're able to unlock the real gym. This makes very little sense to me, but we do it without much issue, evolving our MVPs Munch and Jawbone in the process. Other preparations for Elisa mostly amount to placing a berry on Tear, and before long we're ready for the fight. Elisa starts with her Emolga, and we lead with Tear, but Volt Switch allows her to switch into Flaffy to tank our strength. Another strength is enough to bring Flaffy down, but we're unfortunately paralyzed by static in the process, which will make everything a little bit more difficult for the rest of the fight. We decide to try and live with it and go for another strength on Joltik, but it Volt Switches out and the hit lands on Emolga instead, proccing its Citrus Berry. She sticks to her Volt Switching strategy, and we do massive damage to Joltik before switching out ourselves, sending in Jawbone in the hopes of dampening her core strategy's effectiveness. From here, Crunch is enough to deal with the Joltik, and she sends out the member of her team that scares me the most, Zebstrika. My fear is immediately justified when it hits a crit stomp for massive damage, but Jawbone with a Moxie attack boost is able to return the favor and take it out with a single dig. After this, Jawbone is so beefed up that nothing can stand in his way, and although Aerial Ace brings our health worryingly low, we survive and finish off the Emolga, defeating Elisa and earning the Bolt Badge. With another gym conquered, we fight yet another few Plasma Grunts before heading to Route 5, where we graciously accept Fly from Bianca before tackling the game's mandatory triple battle. Although I was scared of this one going in, we get through it with no issues, which I'm very thankful for. Our next challenge will be Clay's gym, but before fighting him, we head to the Desert Resort to pick up a Firestone that will bring Chewbecca to her next stage. There are no immediately accessible encounters that will be of any help here, so we rappel through before returning to Driftvale, fight our way through the gym trainers, and then take on Clay. We start the fight with Nibble, hoping that her immunity to ground will come into play as we hit our first Confuse Ray. Clay's Krokorok hits through it to open with Sandstorm, and we opt for Fly next, which unfortunately misses. After a quick use of Astonish, we fly again, and are able to hit this time, dealing enough damage to burn its Citrus Berry. He snaps out of confusion, and thankfully goes for another Sandstorm, but we have to confuse him again due to the lingering effects of Torment. Although he hits through the second confusion to land a Crunch, we're able to finish the Krokorok off with the next Fly. Clay brings in Onyx, who normally isn't a threat, but knowing that this one is loaded with Explosion, we have to be careful. We bring out Jawbone, and Onyx gets the flinch with its first Rock Slide. Taking into account Jawbone's lowered health, we decide to opt for a bit of a riskier strategy, layering Sand Attacks with the help of Jawbone's Quick Claw before switching over to Munch, hoping that this preparation will be enough to mitigate the possibility of an explosion hitting. Of course, the Onyx hits its first Bulldoze and our speed drops, but just as we're preparing to fire off a Water Gun, the Onyx goes for Explosion and misses thanks to Jawbone's setup, knocking itself out in the process. Take that, Bruno. Clay sends in Sandslash, who hits Rock Slide but goes down to 2 Water Guns. With Sandslash out of the way, Clay sends in his final heavy hitter, Excadrill, a Pokemon scary enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. In fear of the crit, I decide to place Terra in the line of danger instead, sending her out to tank a massive slash and setting up Confuse Ray. Unfortunately, the Excadrill still hits Bulldoze and Terra goes down, but we'll always remember what she did to make the field safe for her comrades. With the clean switch offered by Terra's sacrifice, we bring in our fully evolved Chewbecca, who unleashes a fury of revenge on Excadrill, taking it out in one flamethrower and earning us the Quake badge. Before we're allowed to continue the story, we're forced into a section about the Pokemon World Championship, which we blitz through as quickly as possible before moving on. Our next, actually plot-relevant step is to board Team Plasma's ship. There were a lot of battles with grunts here, but Nibble fights them all off, and we're quickly removed from the premises. At this point, we've already picked up Nash, our third Watchog, and we also head into Relic Passage to catch Overbite the Raticate. And while we may not be playing Gen 3, I still feel safe in his arms. We next head north to Chargestone Cave, and once our repel wears off, the 2% Tynamo is actually our first encounter, which is just, well, you know, it just makes me wish that this luck came in a run where the Tynamo wasn't a guaranteed encounter. We name the new member of the team Bite, and avoid as many trainers as we can on our way to Miss Tralton City and the Celestial Tower to the north. There are a lot of scary fights here, including an Espeon and Umbreon, but we make it through, ring a bell, train up our team members, and are quickly ready to fight Skyla. We start off with Munch, hoping that Ice Fang will be good enough to get the job done. Her Swoobat hits us with Acrobatics, and although Ice Fang does a lot of damage, it's not quite enough to take it out. As Skyla heals, we hit another Ice Fang, before Skyla reminds us that it's always important to check enemy movesets before battling by hitting Energy Ball, which brings Munch too low for comfort before we take Swoobat out. As she sends in Sigilyph, we switch Munch out for Jawbone, who tanks an Air Cutter before taking Sigilyph out with Crunch and buffing himself up with Moxie. Skyla brings in Swanna, and rather than risk Jawbone, we switch over to Bite, who tanks 2 Surfs and decimates Swanna with an Electric Gem boosted Charge Beam. Skyla brings in Skarmory, and we swap over to Chewbecca, who eats an X-Scissor and defeats Skarmory with 2 Flamethrowers, knocking Skyla out of the air and earning us the Jet Badge. Once Skyla's been grounded, we add to the methods of transport used in this game by boarding a plane, which takes us to Lentimos Town. Bianca tags along for our journey through Reversal Mountain, and before long we're on the other side in Undella Town. We have a rival fight with Na here, which Chewbecca and Jawbone handle with ease, and we then head up Route 13 to Lacunosa Town. Juniper and Bianca drag us away for a story-related conversation, and we then head south to fight against Insulin and a Plasma Grown with Na, which Chewbecca and Superior make quick work of. Chewbecca and Nibble also make quick work of the man on the village bridge, ending his victory streak, and we finally make it to Opelucid City. Once here, it's pretty much a direct line to fighting against Drayden, and after training up, we take him on. He starts with Druddigon, and we bring out Munch for our standard Ice Fang, which does great damage and removes its Citrus Berry. Unfortunately, the Druddigon's Crunch is a crit, which immediately places Munch in a tricky position. Taking a bit of a risky play, we go for Leer, and are lucky when Druddigon opts for revenge. With Druddigon's defense lowered, we're able to confirm the KO with another Ice Fang. Drayden brings in Flygon, and although we'd love to hit it with a 4 times effective Ice Fang, it's not worth it, and we bring out Jawbone instead. Earth Power does more than expected, and though Jawbone is able to tank 2 of them and get Flygon past half health with Crunch, we're forced to switch over to Nibble for the ground immunity. I'm not confident the Fly will KO in 1, and so I go for a Poison Fang first to lower its health and give us the possibility of the poison status. It doesn't happen, but after tanking a Rock Slide, we go for Fly and get the KO. Altaria comes in next, and we hit it with a Confuse Ray before switching over to Bite. Altaria has already set up a few Cotton Guards, so we opt for Thunderbolt here, and we get doubly lucky when the Altaria misses a Sing and then goes down to a crit Thunderbolt from Bite. After this, the big boss Haxorus finally comes out, and we go for Thunder Wave to impede it a bit, but not before it sets up a Dragon Dance that makes me shiver. With the Thunder Wave set up, I decide to switch over to Overbite, knowing that this is likely to be his last battle, but hoping the little guy will pull off a miracle. The Haxorus hits Overbite with Dragon Tail, and though he survives, he's knocked out of the fight and Chewbecca is dragged into his place. This is fine by me, since it lets us lower its boosted attack with Intimidate. We decide to hit Haxorus with Leer while we have the chance, at which point the Haxorus goes for Dragon Dance. So much for Intimidate. Chewbecca lets loose another Leer, and the Haxorus hits another Dragon Dance. This is the point where I realize I'm in too deep, and someone is definitely going down. Although it's not very effective, I try a Fire Fang just to see how much it does, and it's not bad. And then the Haxorus dances again, and I about pass out from the terror. With this much attack, the Haxorus has essentially gained access to Power Word Kill. If he even looks at one of my Pokemon, they're going to die. With this in mind, we turn to Overbite, who's already looked death in the eye and accepted it, and send him out, where he takes a Dragon Tail and gives us the opportunity for a clean switch. As Haxorus is now fast enough to access the Speed Force, we have no choice but to send out Nibble, who has just enough juice to get into the air before the paralyzed Haxorus attempts a Shadow Claw. It's here that something amazing happens, as Nibble taps into everything she has to hit a crit fly, saving the run and earning us the Legend Badge. That's my girl. With that brush with death thankfully behind us, we bid a tearful farewell to Overbite, and add Nash back onto the team to carry the torch. After having a long conversation with Drayden about story beats, Team Plasma shows up in their flying boat and starts blasting. Navigating the icy remains of Opelucid City, we fight our way through a series of encounters with Plasma Grunts, and also take on Zinzalin and a member of the Shadow Triad, neither of whom seem to have any idea what to do against our absolute unit of a dog. Now that we've dealt with this portion of the Team Plasma story, we backtrack to Undella Town and head north through a tube to Humilau City. Realizing that it's finally time to evolve Bite, we get our Electros, prepare our team, and work our way through the Humilau gym to face off against the final gym leader Marlin. Marlin's first Pokemon is a Wailord, which hits a Scald before we're able to launch our first Thunderbolt. But one use turns out to be just enough to take this HP tank of a Pokemon out, and I immediately start to feel pretty confident about this fight. Mantine comes out next, and after tanking its Scald, Bite takes it out with Thunderbolt. Caracosta turns out to be slower than us, and we take it down to 1 HP, getting a lucky paralysis and proccing its Citrus Berry. Caracosta ends up suffering from the paralysis on its next turn, which puts us in the perfect position to take it out. His final Pokemon Jellicent comes in next, and we decide to risk the crit to go for a final Thunderbolt. Jellicent ends up tanking it, and we decide to switch into Nash, nullifying the Shadow Ball and finishing off the Jellicent with a Crunch to earn the Wave Badge. With the gym challenge completed and the endgame in sight, we head west and retrieve the Colress machine from the man himself, before heading back and moving south to make our way through Seaside Cave. On Route 21, we board the Flying Dutchman once again, channeling Solid Snake and weaving through the Plasma Grunts on our quest to deactivate their defense system. Past the lasers, we fight against Zinzalin one more time, who hasn't seemed to get the message that he cannot beat Chewbacca. After this fight, the Flying Dutchman turns into a jet engine for some reason, and we're forced to backtrack to Humilau to traverse the giant chasm in pursuit. After fighting some more Plasma Grunts, we board the ship again, and grapple with another children's puzzle that feels more complex than necessary below deck. Entering the password to deactivate the barrier, we head through and...
Oh no! There you go, Margo! There's no way to stop this! X with the steel chair!
While I'm tempted to be annoyed by the game forcing us to fight him again so soon, more than anything I just feel bad for the guy and his misguided attachment to the ice type. As a fellow ice enjoyer, I understand the pain. Once Zinzalin has been relegated to a grave colder than the ice types he commands, we progress forward to the much scarier fight against Colress in the next room. Colress opens with his Magnemite, and we keep Chewbacca in the lead, going for Flamethrower and bringing Magneton down to 1 HP. Colress switches into his Magnezone, and I fearfully bring Chewbacca back, instead sending out Bite and hoping that he can tank enough damage to deal with it. We go for Thunderbolt, given it's our only damaging move, but the Magnezone paralyzes us and we lose the turn to it. Magnezone uses 2 discharges and we respond with Thunderbolts, both of which do minimal damage, before Colress decides to throw Caution to the wind and hit Explosion, bringing both of our electric types down in the blast. We then send out Jawbone, who deals with Metang in a single Earthquake. Colress then turns to Behem, who goes down to the same, and we're starting to feel a little better, not in small part due to our 2x boosted attack. However, when Kling Klang comes in, Turbo Mode curses me again, and I accidentally hit an Earthquake instead of my intended Sand attack, which gives Colress a free use of Shift Gear. I decide I have to keep Jawbone in anyway, and start to stack up Sand attacks, but it's only a matter of time before Kling Klang hits a boosted Giga Impact, taking our fearless warrior and ace Jawbone down with it. I send out Chewbacca, our constant avenger, who makes quick work of Kling Klang with Flamethrower, and then does the same to his Magneton, avenging her friend's death and bringing an end to Colress. We've won, but we both know that neither of us will ever be the same. Well, maybe we will. While it's obviously sad to lose Bite and Jawbone here, These are two encounters that are actually repeatable in this game, and so after confronting Getsis and watching him scamper away, clearing out the members of the Shadow Triad with Chewbecca and Munch, and abandoning ship, we hold a funeral for our two fallen friends and then quickly run to replace them. In the Relic Castle, we add Mandible to our team, a Moxie Sandile who also has a plus special attack nature. While we're over here, we also catch Beamer the Darumaka, whose cute little smile will eventually grow into a grin large enough to justify their inclusion on the team, and to connect as a stand-in for Electros until it's time to add the next one to the team. Next, we head back toward the Giant Chasm, almost have a heart attack when we accidentally run into this Ace Trainer with a Starmie, and bind and fight Q-Rem and Getsis. As could probably be expected, he's in a cave being nefarious, and after sifting through a lot of dialogue and watching some silly but still arguably baller cutscenes, it's time for us to face off against them. Against Q-Rem, we send out Mandible, given she's immune to Fusion Bolt and can do decent damage with Earthquake. Even so, this fight could have been dicey, but we get lucky when it confusingly insists on going for the one move that has literally no effect on us, and we're able to take it out easily and unfuse the Abomination. Once that's done, it's immediately time for us to fight Getsis. Getsis sends out Cofagrigus first, and after a turn of Protect, we hit it with a Crunch that nearly takes it out in one hit, although this unfortunately nullifies our Moxie ability. Cofagrigus goes for Toxic, and Mandible somehow avoids it, which gives us the chance to hit another Crunch and send the Coffin into one of its own. Getsis follows up with Seismitoad, and I decide to just go for it, taking a Muddy Water and getting rid of the Seismitoad with 2 Earthquakes. Yes, maybe I immediately forgot about Mummy, why do you ask? Getsis brings in Drapion next, and we finally switch over to Chewbecca, who tanks an X-Scissor and Earthquake to first proc a heal, and then take the Drapion out with Flamethrower. Hydreigon comes in next, and I go for Leer, Chewbecca coming within an inch of death to Dragon Rush immediately afterwards. We switch over to Nash, assuming it's finally his time to join his older siblings in their sacrifice for the greater good, but he's more crafty than his predecessors, dodging both Hydreigon's Rock Slide and Dragon Rush before putting it to sleep with Hypnosis. Using this opportunity to switch, we bring out Munch and hit Hydreigon with Ice Fang. Seeing that it's only going to take one more to do it, we immediately load up the next attack, but suddenly, disaster strikes, with Hydreigon waking up and hitting a crit Dragon Rush that does Munch in with a single strike, and forces us to say goodbye to our longest companion and the ultimate Chompy girl. I send in Nibble next for her speed, and we get revenge for Munch with a Poison Fang. Getsis responds with his Electros, and we quickly take Nibble out of danger to send in Beamer for her inaugural boss fight, tanking a Thunderbolt and dealing massive damage with Fire Fang. But somehow disaster strikes again when the Electros hits a crit Acrobatics and wipes the smile off of Beamer's face, sending her to an extremely early grave. With Beamer fainted, we send out Nash, who hits 2 strengths to take the Electros out. Getsis brings out the Toxicroak, and Nash proves his utility once again by landing a Hypnosis to put it to sleep. We use the chance to switch once again to Nibble, but the Toxicroak wakes up before we can fly and hits a Sucker Punch. Thankfully, this does minimal damage, and Nibble is able to land the fly and put an end to our godforsaken fight against Getsis. After this fight, a lot of story stuff happens, but truthfully, I don't really pay any attention. I'm too busy grieving my Chompy boys and girls. Heading back to a Pokemon Center, we hold a small ceremony for Munch and Beamer, and we say our goodbyes. But I know that, more than anything, they would want us to continue, and so I take my remaining team members, go out into the world, and begin to rebuild. Our first stop is Route 11, where we add Eyetooth the Gligar to our team, a chipper fighter despite her unfortunate minus attack nature. We then make our way to the Seaside Cave once again, where we're able to catch our second Tynamo, Megabyte. With these 2 additions, we've rounded out our team once again, at least to the best of our ability. Our next step is to make our way to and through Victory Road, so that we can face our final Elite Four challenge, which in this game is easier said than done. Compared to Fire Red and Leaf Green, where Victory Road is more quaint than a walk in your local park, Univo's Victory Road is a certified death trap. Even so, all we can do is try our hardest to make it through. Let's see how this goes. Miraculously, despite the terror, we're able to traverse this final challenge without losing any of our team members, although there are a few close calls, especially in our final fight with Gnaw, who puts up more of a fight than ever, taking Mandible and Chewbacca both into the red and sending me plummeting into an existential crisis. Thank God Nibble was there to keep me back from the brink, finishing off the fight and allowing us to take the last few steps out of the cave and toward the Pokemon League. Now that we're finally here, we carry out our preparations, equipping type and stat boosting items to our team members, refining their movesets, and praying to any god who will listen. Once that's done, we have our team. Megabyte the Electros, an electric powerhouse who we'll mostly be using as a pivot and to finish off any of our opponent's hangers-on. Eyetooth the Gliscor, a versatile attacker whose varied moveset will be sure to come in handy in the battles to come. Nibble the Crobat, ever reliable, she's our best bet against Marshall and his fighting types. Mandible the Crocodile, the cornerstone of any Unova Elite Four run. She has the potential to solo just about any of them, and we couldn't do this without her. Chewbacca the Arcanine, our oldest veteran, whose accumulated experience and blazing stat spread will be pivotal in granting us the victory. And finally, Snap the Floatzel, the newest member of the team, and also a new face to all of you. We picked him up in Victory Road, somewhere amidst all of the screaming. Ooh, Floatzel! His speed and move pool should prove valuable throughout the Elite Four. It's been a trying, and at times heartbreaking journey to get here, but with our Chompy boys and girls assembled, I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this. First up is Chantal, an emo-core booktuber who starts off with her Cofagrigus. We start off with Megabyte just to avoid Mummy nixing Mandible's Moxie ability. Our first crunch does just over half, and Cofagrigus goes for a Will-O-Wisp to get the burn. With the attack drop and Cofagrigus regaining HP from leftovers, our crunch isn't quite enough to finish the job, and so we switch over to Thunderbolt to take her first Pokemon out. As Chantal brings in Golurk, we switch over to Mandible, hoping to set up a sweep on the rest of her team. Earthquake does a ton of damage, but we go for crunch anyway, getting the KO on Golurk and earning our first attack boost. However, when she brings out the Chandelure, I don't trust that Mandible will outspeed, and so we switch over to Snap. Unfortunately, the Chandelure is faster than him too, and he goes down immediately to the 2 Fire Blasts. I'm so sorry, little buddy. With Snap out of the picture, we have no choice but to swing into Nibble, who's the fastest member of our team, going for Acrobatics. This does good damage, but Chandelure is still faster, and I know that it's time to make a tough decision. Nibble has been incredibly important to this run, but the other members of the team are all much heavier hitters, and I decide her time has come. But luckily for me, Nibble doesn't agree. She dodges the Chandelure's Fire Blast like the acrobat she is and assures the KO, proving I never should have doubted her. With Chandelure gone, we're in a good position to switch out, going for Eyetooth against the Drifblim. This proves to be a smart play as the Drifblim goes for Thunderbolt, voiding the advantage Chantal should have gained from the switch. I decide to set up 2 Swords Dances while tanking Shadow Ball, as I view it as the best way to guarantee the win, and it ends up paying off, with an Ice Fang on Drifblim and an Acrobatics on Bayonet taking them both out and earning us a victory over Chantal. That fight could have gone better, and it's a real shame to lose Snap before he even got a chance to cut his teeth in battle, but I'm happy to still have Nibble on the roster, and I'm feeling pretty good going into the fight with Marshall. He starts the fight with Throw, and we go for an immediate Acrobatics on it, getting lucky when it doesn't do enough to proc a heal. Nibble then shocks me by avoiding Throw's Rock Tomb, and it almost feels like she's trying to make me feel bad for doubting her in the fight with Chantal. Either way, thanks to this, we're able to knock out Throw without taking any damage. Marshall sends out Conkeldurr next, who is probably the scariest member of his team, as a Stone Edge from the burned Guts Conkeldurr will definitely be enough to take Nibble out. Knowing this, we set up Attract, hoping it will buy us some time to take the Conkeldurr out. It sets up Bulk Up, which is worrying both offensively and defensively, and so we go for Confuse Ray, getting lucky with an immediate self-hit from Marshall. After an Acrobatics, followed by another self-hit compounding with burn damage, we get so close to taking Conkeldurr out, but it survives just long enough for Marshall to bring it back with a full restore. Thankfully though, this backfires on him immediately, as it allows us to hit 2 more Acrobatics to take his ace down. Next up is Lucario, and we set up Attract once again while he goes for Calm Mind. Confuse Ray naturally follows, and we get lucky one more time with a self-hit, followed by a massive crit from Nibble to take Lucario out. God damn, she is on a roll today. From here the Sock comes in, who's a little scarier than his brother thanks to his sturdy ability. We go for Confuse Ray first, but aren't able to get the third self hit, tanking a lot of damage from Rock Slide as a result. Luckily, Attract is enough to immobilize Sock, and after bringing him down to 1 HP with Acrobatics, we get that second self hit and he knocks himself out. Marshall's final Pokemon is Mienshao, but it doesn't stand a chance against Nibble's prowess, and folds to a single Acrobatics, ending our fight with Marshall in victory. I have to say, that fight was a masterclass in efficiency by Nibble. Even if she sits the rest of this Elite Four out, I think she's earned her place among the all-time greats of my Nuzlocke runs. Emboldened by our strong performance against Marshall, we quickly move on to the fight with Grimsley. He starts with his Liepard, and we lead with Nibble. Unfortunately, our first Poison Fang doesn't do that much damage, and the Liepard's crit Night Slash immediately brings us into Grim territory. A feeling made no nicer when Grimsley starts mocking us. Even so, I decide to learn my lesson and trust in Nibble, which pays off when she takes out the Liepard with Acrobatics. Grimsley brings out Absol next, and we switch into Chewbecca, hoping Intimidate will mitigate some of the danger. After tanking a Psycho Cut, she hits Fire Fang for great damage, and then finishes off the Absol with Flamethrower. Next up is Grimsley's Crocodile, and as we know firsthand how dangerous this Pokemon can be, we bring in Mandible to combat it. Although I kind of expected this to be an all-out battle between two titans who can only find a match in each other, what actually ends up happening is that Grimsley's Crocodile hits a big earthquake, and I'm forced to switch out for fear of losing mine. We send in Eyetooth instead, who dodges Earthquake and sets up a Swords Dance. Unfortunately, the following Rock Tomb lowers our speed, which means we'll be moving second from now on, taking decent damage to Crunch as we set up one more dance before taking Crocodile out with Ice Fang. Grimsley brings out Scrafty, and rather than risk Eyetooth, we switch over to Megabite, who takes 2 crunches before landing a Thunderbolt. This doesn't do as much as I would have hoped, but without any great options to switch into, I decide to keep Megabite in and do what we can. We luck out with our Quick Claw letting us move first, but Megabite unfortunately goes down to Scrafty's Brick Break. Given that Chewbecca has the most health, and also because her Intimidate can counteract the Scrafty's Moxie bonus, we switch into her, setting up a Flamethrower that hits after Grimsley uses a full restore. This does good damage, and we're able to get the KO with the next one despite the Scrafty's leftovers. Grimsley's final Pokemon is Bisharp, and although this might seem like an easy win, it has a Quick Claw, which lets it hit a cheeky Night Slash that could have killed if it had been a crit. Luckily, however, that doesn't happen, and Chewbecca survives to let loose one final Flamethrower to take it out, and earn us our win over Grimsley. That fight went about how I expected. Although I could have led with Mandible and hoped for a Moxie-backed sweep, I decided to play it a little safer, and although we lost Megabite, I'm happy to be through it with our heaviest hitters still in play. Even better is that the only member of the Elite Four remaining is Caitlyn, a dreamy Psychic-type specialist whose team is, while formidable, not really suited to face off against a Crocodile. While I could give a play-by-play here, I think it's best just to show the highlights.
Oh my god! Wow!
Oh my God!
Oh my god. Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
So yeah, Caitlyn is not a problem, which brings an end to our main Elite Four challenge. All that's left is Iris, who, while definitely beatable, is going to prove a major challenge to our 4 remaining Chompy Bois. In preparation for this fight, I cook up a bit of a risky strategy, which I'd like to discuss here. Basically, Iris is terrifying. Her team would be difficult even if we had a full team of 6, so with only 4 to work with, our work is cut out for us. Particularly, I need a way to make sure we can beat her Hydreigon before it can sweep our entire team, which is why I've decided to equip Chewbecca with Dragon Pulse and lead with her. With her decent defenses and massive special attack stat, all I can do is hope that she can take it out and pave the way for the rest of the team's victory. Throughout this entire run, I feel like all we've done is rely on Chewbecca to get us out of sticky situations, and even here at the end of the road, it's no different. It's all up to her. Chewbecca is fearless as she's sent out to face the Hydreigon, her well-earned confidence shaking her enemy enough to cut its attack stat. And I know Intimidate doesn't mean much against a special attacking Hydreigon, but I at least appreciate the message it sends. We launch a Dragon Pulse at it for massive damage, and the Hydreigon replies in turn, bringing Chewbecca close to the red with Surf. Unfortunately for Iris, we're faster, and Chewbecca is able to take out the Hydreigon with one more Dragon Pulse. Iris brings out her Aggron next, and though Chewbecca's Flamethrower deals a good chunk of damage, it isn't enough to take it out. As the aggron hits the double edge that ends her life, Chewbecca doesn't turn around, eyes trained forward toward oblivion. I'm glad that she didn't look back. It's just like her to face death head on, as she has so many times before. On the back of her teammate's heroic sacrifice, Mandible comes in and gets revenge on the aggron with Earthquake. Druddigan comes out next, and we go for Earthquake, hoping the stab boost will be enough to take him out, but it's just barely not enough. Druddigan's Outrage deals massive damage to Mandible, but thankfully the recoil also spells an end for her assailant. Iris sends out Lapras next, and Mandible doesn't hesitate to launch an Earthquake at it, even if it is risky. While it doesn't KO, the Lapras misses its Blizzard attempt, and after the full restore, Mandible finishes off the Lapras with Earthquake. Iris sends out her Haxorus, and Mandible has to try it, even if we both know the Haxorus is faster. The Haxorus goes for Outrage, landing the crit, but although Mandible goes down, she goes down swinging. After Mandible's passing, we switch into Eyetooth, whose Ice Fang is one of our best hopes to deal with Haxorus. Although its Outrage does a lot of damage, Eyetooth is able to hold on, hitting a huge crit Ice Fang that very well may save the run. Iris decides to risk striking rather than healing, and this ends up being a grave tactical error, with the Haxorus' Outrage ending in confusion, the following self-inflicted damage being enough to take itself out. And we breathe a sigh of relief. But we're not out of the woods yet. Iris' last Pokemon is Archeops, a rock flying type with a solid matchup against our two remaining flyers. In light of this, we decide to keep Eyetooth in and go for broke, hitting an Ice Fang for great damage. Although I was ready to lose Eyetooth here, she had other ideas. Taking a page from Nibble's book, she puts her agility to use, dodging the Archeops' Stone Edge and driving an Icy Fang into the heart of her enemy, which is the last push we need to topple Iris and claim the crown over Univa's Elite Four. Whew. That entire run was a little harder than I expected. Being honest, I kind of assumed we would catch a Crocodile and take it straight to the bank. But I think that these kind of unexpected challenges are exactly what make a run like this fun. I know that this challenge might not be as direct as something like a Monolock or a Wedlock, but even so, I hope you enjoyed watching me and my Chompy friends take on the Unova region together. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll take a look at what else we've got. From challenge runs, to discussions, to blind playthroughs of Pokemon ROM hacks, we're trying to get a variety of content out there, and we would appreciate any support. If you want to keep up with what else we do, I'd also encourage you to subscribe, so that you can make sure you catch our upcoming videos. But that's enough from me. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day. And remember, stay phenomenal.